This is Marty with Marty's Diesel, and today's video I just want to go over properly sizing T-bolt style clamps for intercooler boots. Here I have one of our intercooler boots that we put on. In this particular case it's a 6 liter. But basically I want to make sure that nobody runs into a situation where they're blowing boots or they don't have the clamp, on right. Maybe it's bottomed out, maybe it's, too big to even go on, or too small to even go on, maybe the boot's too big. Either which way, I just want to go over that today. So first and foremost, I want to start with this particular clamp. As you can see, it slides on without issue, okay? As you can see as well, when you go to tighten it down, when it's not installed on anything, you can see that the nut would end up somewhere near the middle section of the threaded portion of this clamp. This is going to be an example of what you want to see when you're sizing your T-bolt style clamps to go onto a boot, okay? You'll also notice that some of these clamps themselves actually have like a line right here. You can see how it's like on the inside. You want that to be on this side of the clamp as this tightens down, okay? So when you go to tighten one of these clamps down, you want this clamp to have the nut somewhere near the middle. It can be, 5 threads on or 5 threads from bottoming out, but it can't be all the way bottomed out, and it can't be to where you're barely able to get the nut on. This thing should be moving when you're installing it on the boot, and the nut should end up somewhere near the middle of the threads. Now, contrast that with this clamp, okay? This clamp, to me, is obviously too big, but to some other people, maybe not. When I put this clamp on, I can tighten it down, and it will get tight if it's installed over an intercooler. But this right here will likely blow off under high boost or even maybe moderate boost, okay? And that's because this is going to be bottomed out. This nut is going to be near the very end of the threads. This part and this part are almost touching. And that's without me even running the gun on it or it actually being on anything. Your goal is that you want this clamp to actually bite into this boot a little bit, okay? And if it bottoms out like this right here with just your hands, this clamp is too big. So do not install a clamp on a boot like this where it's too big. What you want is something that looks like this. Now, there are also other clamps out there that have longer T-bolts and then they have springs on them. I like those too. They're kind of like a constant torque style clamp. That doesn't change where this nut wants to end up, okay? You still want to have the nut engaged in the threads, and you don't want this piece touching this piece. You actually, for a general rule of thumb, you want to be able to put your finger right in there like that before you actually tighten it down to make sure that these two pieces cannot touch. If they're able to touch, it's going to blow off. Now, conversely, let's say that, this was barely able to fit over. It was kind of like this to where you can barely fit it over. That's not going to work either. So you have to make sure that you're using clamps that are the right size, especially when we go with these, thicker clamps, because all of the engineering goes out the window. Like the stuff that you get from Ford with all the different locations of where they go and stuff, somebody has already sat down somewhere and did all of that engineering. I don't think it really takes a whole lot of brain power to get this correct. So when we go with these aftermarket thicker boots, sometimes, most often, you have to upsize the clamp by one size over factory. Not only that, the factory clamps are like $25, $27, $28, $30. These clamps are typically $10 or less. And I've had them hold 100 PSI when properly sized. So this particular setup right here should be just fine to 100 PSI if done correctly. So that'll be all for today's video on sizing the clamps.